Hello everybody, welcome back to CM42 TV and welcome back to Random Wrestler Recollection. Yes, this is the show in which I reach into the random box of DVD RWs. What I should do is I should write a wee R here on the end, so it would be Random Wrestler Recollection. DVD plus Random Wrestler Recollection. This is the series where I reach into this random box, I pull out a random wrestler's name and I use my obscure wrestling fan knowledge to the best of my ability, and I test myself. That's the point. I test myself. It's not really a point. There's no real purpose, but I test my wrestling fan knowledge by talking about the wrestler that comes out here. It could be the most obscure wrestler ever. It could be the greatest of all time. Who knows? Who knows? You do. You know before me, because you've seen the title and stuff like that. I don't know who I'm going to talk about here. And that's the beauty of it. And I like the really obscure ones, because then it tests me a bit more. I say ones, I've only done one before. The first episode was about Eugene. Could you have got more obscure? I loved it. Let's do it. Who are we going to be talking about today? Reaching into the random box, and we're going to be talking about you, sir. I've got two here. You, oh, I got nearly dropped all of them. That would have been a disaster. I'm going to talk about this person here. Let's see who it's going to be. Fingers crossed it's someone half decent. Okay, here we go. Oh, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, dripping, son of a gun. Woo! It's the Nature Boy. Brilliant. Not very obscure, Ric Flair. Not very obscure, but that's alright, because I said it could be the greatest of all time. Isn't Nate the greatest of all time? I don't know. I'm assuming, you know, if you were in the 80s or the 90s, you'd probably think that Ric Flair was the greatest of all time. It's a different style of wrestling to what I'm accustomed to. But when you grow up and stuff, and you can go back and watch old Ric Flair matches and stuff, you can see why people say he's the greatest of all time. Now, Ric Flair is somewhat relevant now, for two reasons for me. Obviously because Charlotte, his daughter, is legitimately one of the best female wrestlers of all time. But then you also, recently, there was a song released that I really, really like, called Ric Flair Drip. Now, I'm not a hip-hop fan, I'm not a rap fan or anything. I like all sorts of music, but I have my favourites. I'm more of a sort of metal guy, hard rock sort of thing, because I'm pure cool, man. But that's kind of what I go to, that's my listening choice, you know, that or fucking High School Musical. That's a story for another day. Or another podcast. I did a full episode about it. Anyway, but my good close personal friend Paul, you may know him as By the Way Paul, he is a big sort of hip-hop fan, a big sort of rap fan, that sort of thing, and there's an artist by the name of, or artists I should say, by the name of Migos, and one of the members of Migos is a guy called Offset, who shouts, "Offset!" before he starts singing in the songs. And there's a song by another artist called Metro Booming that has Offset in the song. And the song is about Ric Flair. It is the Ric Flair Drip, and it's so catchy, it's so good, and it's kind of make me want to listen to some more hip-hop. So that's why Ric Flair is somewhat relevant to me now. That might be why I wrote his name here. Ric Flair, this is going to take ages. How am I going to get Ric Flair thoughts out in a quick time? I'm going to try. So yeah, early wrestling fan memories of Ric Flair. The first time I ever saw him was when he came back to the WWE right after the Survivor Series in 2001, where he came back as the co-owner of the WWF. The consortium was me! And that's when I first knew Ric Flair. I didn't know who he was. I didn't, you know, I was a WWE guy. I had just watched the Alliance Invasion stuff, which I loved. And I'm sure I'll get to that at another point as well. I'd like to kind of make a sort of positive chat about that, because all I hear about the Invasion and the Alliance stuff is negativity, and I think that's nonsense. But that's for another time again. I was a WWE guy. I didn't know anybody who wasn't in WWE at that point in my life in early 2002 and stuff like that. But of course you grow to love Ric Flair over the years, because he's definitely one of the most likeable wrestlers of all time. And when I mean that in the best way, because obviously as a babyface you're going to love him, but when he's a heel, you know, it's that switch, you know, it's the switch of you really want to, you hate him and you want to kill him, and then you just go to fucking laughing and howling at stuff he's doing, right? So I talked about this recently, and you know, I talked about it in the last Random Wrestler Recollection episode about Eugene, going back and watching some old sort of 2003, 2004 WWE stuff like Raw and that sort of thing. And Triple H, of course, around that time was the top dog. Why wouldn't he be? He was still in the prime of his career and stuff, and he was one of the people in charge. And Ric Flair was his manager. You know, the sort of older wrestler in Evolution, and just being a manager in general. And some of the stuff that Flair does just cracks me up. And almost, in fact, not everything Flair did at that sort of time, when he was kind of Triple H's manager and stuff, just cracks me up, makes me laugh so much. I love it. And I'm just thinking now, I'm talking about him like in 2003 and 2004, well past his prime. Obviously Flair's prime is the 80s and stuff. But this is my wrestling fan memories of him, you know. My memories of him in the 80s and stuff is from, you know, recent years, going back and watching it on the network and going back and watching his DVDs and stuff like that. But in terms of me as a wrestling fan, I know him as, you know, Triple H's manager. I know him as the veteran that was always superb and just like always delivering and always up for a good laugh and stuff. The Nature Boy is the one that always keeps people smiling, and that's a great thing. Obviously it is. That's what we go for here. Things like taking the jacket off and slamming it down and elbowing the jacket, and things like trying to get into the ring to try and save Triple H, or trying to distract the ref or something, and the ref having a wrestling match with Flair is too good. And then hearing like JR and King on commentary, you know, just kind of like King really sticking up for Flair and JR hating him. Flair has no business up there, damn it! Things like that, I think it's just dead funny. But other than that, you know, Ric Flair retired in 2008, or retired in 2008, and had the match, the career-threatening match at WrestleMania 24 with Shawn Michaels, one of my favourite matches of all time. The night after that, here's a wrestling fan memory, the night after WrestleMania 24, the Raw after Mania for 2008, Flair had that sort of retirement speech thing at the end of the show. The first time wrestling made me cry. Yeah, the first time I can remember something on TV making me physically sob and be sad and be so emotional was that Ric Flair thing. It just got me, and it gets everybody. And I love going back and watching it now. Not to cry or anything, but just because it's mad. Just like, it's such a weird thing. Flair retires, and the end of Raw, Triple H has like a ceremony for him. You know, and it's amazing. People come out and like thank him and stuff, and Cena's there and Jericho's there, but then you get like Steamboat comes out and the Four Horsemen comes out, and it's mad, it's great. And then Taker comes out afterwards, and Vince and stuff. It's so good, that song that's like revolutionary in the wrestling world, the memory song, leave the memory alone. So good. When you hear that, you just think of WrestleMania time. It just gives you the buzz, and it just makes you think of how amazing wrestling is. And then of course Flair went to TNA and stuff like that, and kind of like ruined all the sort of retirement thing, but he's still Flair. You're never going to hate him, you know what I mean? You're never going to say, people who say Ric Flair should just stop everything, it should stop showing up and stuff. First of all, I don't think you're very fun, but this is Ric Flair, you know what I mean? This is the Nature Boy with a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment of my life. That's my Ric Flair impression. It's not very good, but sometimes I can do it good. See, when I do the whole limousine riding thing, if I really get into it, it can be sometimes decent. I don't know. Jay Lethal does the best Flair impression apparently. But anyway, that's totally random. But that's the point of the series: random wrestler recollection. What other memories do we have? So obviously, now being like a big wrestling fan and stuff, and knowing the business, you go back and watch Flair stuff, and you go back to his prime, and you watch his matches with Steamboat and Savage, and well, Savage was kind of just in WWE, but and Dusty Rhodes, and his classic matches in like the 80s in WCW and the NWA, and even some in the WWF back in the early 90s. He is just like, there's no one like Ric Flair. Style wise, promo wise, the promos are always something that gets me as a wrestling fan, is if you can sort of invite me in with your promos. And Flair may be the best promo guy of all time. When I think of who's the best promo guy, Flair, Rock, Foley, Austin, you think that it's like the same group of people all the time, but it's that they're the best promo guys, you know. Right now, who's my favourite promo in WWE? Samoa Joe, probably. It's my favourite promo guy just now. The Miz, obviously. But yeah, Flair's promos obviously being revolutionary, and obviously making such a name for himself and for the wrestling business. He was pro wrestling back in the 80s, but again, I don't know too much about it. I know what I know as a wrestling fan, but Flair is, to me anyway, I consider Flair as obviously one of the greatest of all time, but he's never really cracked that like top 10 for me as favourites of all time, you know. Just because he was past my era, you know. My era was the late 90s all throughout the 2000s, you know, when Flair obviously did a lot of stuff in WWE, but he was just a character on the show. He was never the top guy, he was never the main eventer, but I just have so much fond memories of him with Triple H and being daft and silly and funny and just always being up to no good. And that's just, I love when he comes out, I love watching interviews with him, I love hearing podcasts with him, because he's Ric Flair and he's the Nature Boy. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously I could speak about Flair for loads and talk about, you know, his greatest matches and stuff, but I feel like should be about what I think about him in terms of my memories of him, you know, and that's really it, you know. Flair's Flair. He retired in 2008. He comes back every now and again, and he's the Nature Boy and Ric Flair drip, baby. Obviously, when I think of Ric Flair, I don't immediately think of the Ric Flair drip song by Offset, but yeah, it's just something that's relevant just now, you know. So, yeah, Flair's the best ever in some cases, and to some people, you hear it all the time as well. See, when you ask people, you go, who's your favourite wrestler ever? You hear Ric Flair all the time, which obviously means something, and obviously shows that he is one of the greatest ever. My favourite Ric Flair match is got to be the one with Shawn at WrestleMania 24. Obviously, Royal Rumble 92 is classic, and of course, you know what I love as well? The Ric Flair flop. See when he does the fall and the bump and stuff. I love all that shit, man. I love all that stuff where it's just like it suspends your disbelief, and it's sort of like that, sort of like let in a wee bit more. You know, wrestling's real, but then Flair does this, and it's just like, it's great. It's a wee sort of wink to the audience, you know, which I always love things like that. But yeah, there's some Ric Flair thoughts. I'm sure I could do a full hour talking about Flair, but I'm not going to do that because he's a 60-minute man. I don't know. Another thing I guess you could talk about is how inspirational he is to everybody else. You know, everybody kind of has a hint of Flair in them. You know, whether it be a chop or it be a swagger or whether it be a promo or whatever. You know, Flair started all that wearing the big robes and being what's the word, flamboyant and stuff like that. He's the Nature Boy, and I got to stop talking now because I feel like I'm rambling and I feel like I'm just trying to make excuses for not knowing too much about 80s Flair stuff. But that's not my time. That's not my era. And to me, when I look back, Flair is one of the best of all time. But, you know, I missed the best of Ric Flair. And I love watching anything Ric Flair. I love watching anything Nature Boy. It's just, it brings you joy. So I recommend doing it right now. If you're having a bad day, go and watch some of the Nature Boy. Nate, woo! His Hall of Fame speech, by the way, maybe the best Hall of Fame speech of all time. Let's end on that. Anytime he's at the Hall of Fame, when he's inducting somebody, or the Four Horsemen thing, I think is amazing as well when they induct the Four Horsemen, and he was in TNA at the time, and people are chanting, please come back, and he just doesn't give a flying focus, and he's like, oh, I want to, not as if, you know, his bosses are feckin' watching, but yeah, his Hall of Fame speech is the best ever. Until next time, thanks for joining us on Thanks for joining us on RWR, Random Wrestler Recollection. Until next time, peace.